Last month, I was reviewing docs for a company that built an AI scheduling assistant. You know, one of those tools that learns your meeting patterns, suggests times, and auto declines conflicts. The entire user facing explanation was one sentence: AI helps you manage your calendar smarter. I asked the PM, what happens when it declines a meeting the user actually wanted? How do they know it was AI? How can they override it? They can just manually accept it after, right? That's the problem. We are shipping AI and hoping users figure it out. I'm Brittany Ball, and this is Technically Speaking. Welcome to Technically Speaking, the audio version of the Documentation Engineer newsletter. Every Wednesday, I grade AI companies A through F using the AI Documentation Ethics Benchmark. I break down what users see, where the information lives, and whether it meets the standard of informed consent. If you're new here, I'm a documentation engineer and chief knowledge officer at Aortum. Before that, I spent many years at Meta serving developers. Before that, I was a software engineer. I've spoken at conferences, been on podcasts, and got featured in Business Insider and New York Times. When I got laid off, I came back as a founder. I built Technodocs because I kept seeing the same pattern. Companies ship AI without explaining it. And that gap between what the AI does and what users understand is not a UX problem. It's an ethics problem. The documentation gap is an ethics gap. They're the same problem. Let's unpack. The explanation failure that precedes the technical failure. That scheduling assistant I mentioned, it shipped. Right now, someone's important meeting got auto declined and they have no idea why. They think they missed it. They don't know a machine made that call. This is a pattern everywhere. We build AI features, add a toggle switch, maybe a tooltip, and ship. The assumption is users will explore and just figure it out. But here's what actually happens. Most conversations about AI ethics focus on bias in algorithms, problems with the training data, models optimizing for the wrong goals. All true, all important, but there's something that happened before any of that. The user was never told what they were interacting with. A content moderator doesn't know which post got flagged by AI versus reviewed by a human. A job applicant doesn't know if software or a hiring manager screened their resume. Someone using a medical app doesn't know if a diagnosis suggestion came from pattern recognition or an actual medical reasoning. This opacity creates conditions where things go wrong and nobody catches it. When users can't understand a system, they can't tell when it's being misused. They can't calibrate their trust. They can't push back when something feels off. They can't ask for better. The documentation gap becomes an accountability gap. And right now, in May 2026, with the EU Act 3 months from full enforcement, companies are starting to realize this gap is about to get expensive. what transparency without comprehension actually looks like. The AI industry's response to ethics concerns has been to promise transparency. But transparency without comprehension is just performance. It doesn't protect anyone. I grade ChatGPT, Claude, and Gemini every week in the newsletter. Here's what their documentation actually looks like. ChatGPT scatters limitation across blog posts, help articles, and occasional disclaimers. You might try to search the web, watch it fail, only to find out that it's a paid feature. The knowledge cutoff date appears inconsistently. The serious stuff, medical advice, disclaimers, legal guidance, warnings, accuracy caveats, those show up reactively. After you've already gotten the answer, Claude does better. It tells you when it's uncertain, it flags reasoning errors, it admits it can't verify, but the documentation is still fragmented. How the training cutoff connects to what it can't discuss reliably. Not explained up front. How Opus handles complex reasoning differently than sonnet and haiku. You have to hunt for that. You learn through trial and error. Gemini struggles with consistency. Some versions pull in real-time information, others don't. Some analyze images, others can't. The docs list these features on a menu instead of boundaries. When Gemini gets something wrong, you rarely get an explanation for why. Training gap, reasoning failure, you're guessing. What's striking isn't that these systems have limitations. What's striking is the assumption you'll figure out the right way to use them by exploring, by making mistakes. That assumption shifts the ethical burden from the companies building the systems to the users trying to make sense of them. And that shift isn't accidental, it's structural. The ethics through explanation framework. So, how do we fix it? I built a framework called the ethics through explanation. The premise, clear communication, isn't what you do after you build ethical AI. It's a requirement for ethical AI in the first place. 4 components. First, capability mapping before feature launch. Before you can ship an AI feature, write down what it does well and what it does poorly. Not in legal terms, in user terms. Create a reference people can check before they trust the output with something that matters. If your AI analyzes medical images but shouldn't be used for diagnosis, say that in the product, not in a policy document, in the interface. Second, contextual disclosure at decision points. Stop treating documentation like a separate resource users go find when they're confused. Put the explanation where the decision happens. When someone's about to submit a resume that AI screened, publish code that AI wrote, make a financial decision based on AI analysis, that's when you need to understand the limitations, not on the help page, right there, at the moment of choice. This doesn't mean warning labels everywhere. It means smart contextual cues. This code has not been tested. This summary might miss contradictions. This recommendation comes from patterns, not your specific situation. Third, progressive disclosure of technical reality. Different users need different paths. A casual user needs this AI suggests things based on what you like before. A power user once, "We're using collaborative filtering on your last 90 days of activity." A developer needs the full specs. Build for all three. Start simple. Let people click deeper if they want. Don't force everyone through an explanation that's too basic or too technical for what they need. Fourth, failure mode education. Every AI has predictable failure patterns. Language models hallucinate. Image recognition breaks on edge cases. Recommendation systems create filter bubbles. Document these. Keep a running list. Update it when you find new ones. And show users these limitations when they're relevant. When ChatGPT 4 added vision, OpenAI could have documented common failures right in the product. Text and images causes problems. Medical scans aren't reliable. Face recognition has limits. Some of that exists in the docs, but it's not integrated where you're using the feature. So you learn by failing. And when those failures have consequences, that's an ethics problem. Who should own an AI ethics documentation? Here's the part that sounds radical, but isn't. Documentation teams should be in AI ethics review alongside data scientists and lawyers. Documentation people translate technical decisions into language humans understand. They discover that confidence score means nothing to most users. They fill the support tickets when AI does something unexpected. They're positioned to ask the right questions, like, how do we explain this? If the answer is, we can't explain this simply, that's a signal the system might be too opaque to ship ethically. If the answer is, we'll bury it in terms of service, that's a signal you're dumping responsibility on users. This isn't about slowing down development. This is about recognizing that explainability is a feature. Systems you can't explain clearly to users aren't ready because the social interface isn't there. Real example. I worked with a company where docs got pulled into design early. They asked, how do we explain to a non-technical user why the AI recommended this? That question surfaced an edge case engineering missed. The AI optimized for engagement, so it would sometimes show repeated content if it predicted high interaction. Fine if you explain it. Confusing if you don't. They shipped with a note. You might see repeated recommendations because we've learned you engage with this content. Solved, but only because the documentation was in the room when the decision got made. The business case for documentation. Its competitive advantage. Companies that explain their AI clearly build deeper trust. Users understand what the system can and cannot do, so they trust it for the right reasons. They don't overtrust and get burned. They don't dismiss it because they don't understand it. They reduce support burden. Most AI support tickets come from misaligned expectations. Documentation fixes the gap before it becomes a ticket. They accelerate adoption. People use tools they understand. Well-documented AI gets integrated into workflows faster than mysterious black boxes. They mitigate regulatory risks. The EU AI Act hits full enforcement in August. 3 months. One core requirement. AI systems must be explainable to affected users. not to engineers, not to regulators, to regular people. Most companies aren't ready. The documentation doesn't exist yet. They're about to scramble. And when something goes wrong, documentation is your defense. If you can show you explained limitations, guided appropriate use, gave users a way to appeal, you're in a stronger position than if you buried everything in legal disclaimers. The companies winning in AI won't just have the best models, they'll have the models people can use. And you can't use what you don't understand. What you can do this week. If you're building AI, run the 7-question documentation audit. Here are the questions. 1. Can a non-technical user understand what your AI does without clicking to another page? 2. Are limitations in the same place as the capabilities? 3. Do you explain what data you use and who can access it? 4. Can users find this before they use the feature? 5. Do you document failure modes with examples? 6. Is there a clear way to flag errors or appeal decisions? 7. Do you tell users when the AI behavior changes? If you answered no to more than 2, you have a documentation gap. Get your documentation team in the next AI feature review. Before code is written, ask them, how do we explain this? Listen to what surfaces. Write one limitation statement using the formula I teach. Specific plus contextual plus action-oriented. Bad, AI-generated content may not be accurate. This AI summarizes long documents but might miss contradictions or subtle arguments. Always check the summary against the original before making important decisions. The second tells users what to watch for and what to do. The documentation gap isn't a technical problem waiting for better AI to solve. It's a prioritization problem. Every time we ship AI without explaining its boundaries, we make a choice. We say speed matters more than informed consent. Simplicity matters more than understanding. Fixing this doesn't require breakthroughs. It requires treating documentation like infrastructure, as essential as the model itself. It requires documentation in ethics conversation. It requires measuring success not just by what the AI can do, but by whether users understand what it's doing. The industry talks about responsible AI, ethical AI, trustworthy AI, but trust without understanding is faith, and faith isn't a foundation for technology that affects people's lives. We need a new baseline. Before we ask users to trust our AI, we need to explain it well enough that they can decide for themselves whether that trust makes sense. That's not just good documentation, that's ethics in action. This has been Technically Speaking, the audio companion to the Documentation Engineer newsletter. If you're not already subscribed, go to the documentationengineer.substack.com. Next episode, AI governance without documentation is theater, and I've got receipts. Until then, document the limitations, not just the capabilities.